Hello, everybody. This is Jim Nowakowski on behalf of Interline Creative Group, and we're in a webinar entitled How to Target and Hit the Right Customers. That's something everybody should be interested in. We've got a big audience today. Very happy you're with us. We'll be sharing some ideas, and we encourage you to put in your questions in the question box, and we will answer them as much as we can. Ready? Let's begin. This course is approved by the AIA. Interline is an AIA provider. They've reviewed it and they've approved the content. This course is also approved by the IDCEC for you interior designers and designers out there. And it's also approved by the NKBA. So those three fine organizations have reviewed the material, approved it, and this has been revised. We've had this course for a number of years, but we revise it every year or so to freshen it up. And you're getting a fresh look on how to target and hit the right customers. It's copyright, but if you email me after the webinar, jim@interlinegroup.com, which you'll see on the screen when we're done, I'll be happy to send you a PDF file of these slides rather than you having to take screenshots. When we describe the course, it's for today's executives. And by the way, we have more than architects, designers, kitchen and bath showroom consultants in the audience today. We have businesses, small businesses, some metal fabricators, etc. In the ever-changing economy, you're going to need proven tactics to do your lead generation and retention, right? That's what we're talking about today. And the tactics we're going to talk about today have to be reshaped to increase sales because of the changing environment, mainly brought about by AI. And specifically, this course will empower you to take control of finding new customers and nurturing them. You understand? This is very, very important. You got to keep feeding the funnel. Feed the funnel. And it begins with controlling and understanding how customers and prospects consume, create, and distribute information. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter to me what you make, what service you provide, what business you're in. You and I and everyone else on this webinar, and even not on this webinar, we're in the content war business. This is a content war. Content is the new currency. It's the new gold. You got to generate content, information about your business. Fortunately, AI is here to help us or deter us, right? So we have to learn to use these new tools. So the presentation will show your role in this three-part process: consuming, creating, and distributing information to find, attract, and nurture new business. So at the end of the course, you're going to get some information, how information is created and distributed, your information and others' information. We're going to look at some new techniques to find prospects. I'm going to give you specific examples about that. And again, ask your questions, and then we'll answer as many as we can after the webinar. And we're going to recognize how to gain knowledge, because knowledge is the key to all of this, ladies and gentlemen. It's the key. We want to allocate time, because time is the non-renewable resource. I give this to all the people in my webinars. First of all, I'm very appreciative you're here today, because you could be anywhere else, but you're here with me and I'm here with you. And time is, in fact, the only non-renewable resource. We will never get this time back. Let me read you a quote from the calendar in front of me. A limit of time is fixed for us, which if we do not use it to clear away the clouds from our minds, it will go and will go, and it will never return. That's from my buddy Marcus Aurelius. Isn't that true? So we're going to examine how strategy is very, very important. I always like to start out with a graphic or a story. And this is the most powerful graphic you'll understand about finding and nurturing new business, hitting your targets. List, offer, and then the creative execution. What does that mean? Well, in the agency business that I was spawned from, I came from direct mail, so list is the most important thing in your nurturing and hitting the right targets. Your offer is the second most important thing, and then your creative, basically how you approach them with your offer, is the third most important. And I can give you an example of this on why that's important. For example, Early in my career, I went to work for the largest Jewish synagogue in Chicago, Temple Sholem, and he wanted to sell bricks for $1,000 to get your name on a brick to sponsor the new garden. So I wrote a direct mail letter. He gave it to his secretary to read, and she started crying. She said, "Oh, this is a beautiful letter." We sent it out with a brochure about the new garden. And in 2 weeks, we had generated $200,000. So $1,000 a brick, we sold 200 bricks. Now, I could tell you it was the beautiful letter I wrote, but I would be lying to you. That was the creative execution, right? I could tell you it was the offer, $1,000 a brick. That's a lot of money for your name on a brick. It wasn't the offer, it was the list. If it was the synagogue's list, if I had sent this to the Catholics, I wouldn't have got a dime. You understand? So the list, more important than anything else we're going to talk about today, is the most important thing in your quest for new customers to hit them and target them. So welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. Critical questions we want to talk about that I'm going to answer throughout this webinar. I want you to think about this and write them down, or at least think about them. The customer that I would most like to get that I don't have now. Who is that customer? I would most like to get this customer. Who is that customer? Do you have somebody in mind, or do you want to spray and pray at the world? Forget that spray and pray strategy, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about targeting. So what customer would you really most like to get? How about this next question? The customer I lost that I would like to get back. Who's that? What customer is that? The market I would like to most penetrate. I would really like, oh boy, if I can only penetrate this market. And you're all in a market now, but if only I could get to this one market, what market would that be? And what is it about that best customer that makes that customer the best in your mind? What is it? Jim, I've got this best customer. Well, what is it about that best customer? I'm a big stickler about words. I'm an English major. What do you mean by the best? And finally, what is it about your worst customer that makes that customer the worst? Oh, Jim, I got this. Oh my God, I get headaches every time they call. What is it about the worst customer that makes them the worst? Because as we're going to talk about, everything is in your frame of mind. You determine what's best. You determine what's worst. You're the one. It's not about the customer. It's not. It's really you that determine the best and the worst. Okay? So some people answer the first question. Well, I don't even know if I can answer that now because, Jim, every customer counts. Okay, that's a good answer, but that's not what I'm looking for. I want you to pick out one because the object today is leads. Instead of too much business, I think we'll all agree in the audience, there's just not enough business. I mean, I have friends who are overwhelmed sometimes. I've got too much business. Isn't that a great position to be in? Well, good luck with that. Then you don't probably need this course. Okay, the customer you lost. Well, Jim, I can't afford to lose one customer, but you're going to lose customers. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in business, winning and losing customers is a fact of business, right? You don't retain everybody you make. So there's no response means that they're struggling too. If they don't give you a response, they're struggling too. Well, if only they had the budget. No. You can't get blood out of a turnip. You heard that? If they don't have a budget, I just had a client turn down a huge budget and they didn't even read it. They just looked at the bottom line and said, I can't afford it. They didn't even know what I was selling. What? It's a current client. How do you think that made me feel? The good news is that we have a wonderful, honest relationship and they were able to admit that to me. Do your customers admit that to you, that it is about price? We'll talk about that. And the markets have shifted. Some hum along, but everything is being reconfigured, isn't it? Look at the commercial. We're going to talk about the commercial market today. That the commercial market is struggling. You've got commercial properties sitting empty. And so Gensler and architects like that are talking about strategies to reconfigure these down and out commercial properties into residential properties. And the best is being redefined, and so is the worst. As the great Elmer Letterman said, the sale begins when the customer says no. If you haven't read that book, Google it. It's out of print now. The sale begins when the customer says no. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish I could give you my virtual switch because it's time to flip the switch. This is the part of the presentation where I break out into songs. See me, feel. No, I'm not going to do it, but see me, feel me, touch me. Ladies and gentlemen, you live in a digital world. If you expect to get new business, if you expect to touch and target prospects, they have to see you, they have to feel you, and they have to touch you. Digitally. But the problem is when you do that, you enter, as I told you in the beginning, the information world. The information world is full of content. It's crazy content. This is every minute of every day. Every minute of every day. Facebook is generating every minute 4 million posts. Google is looking at 6.3 million searches. Instagram is users download 3,720, right? Downloads every minute. So how the heck do you expect to be found? See me, feel. Jim, what are you talking about? How can I compete, right? How can I do this? Well, you can start by reading one of my blogs, B2B Never Sleeps. In fact, if you Google B2B Never Sleeps, just Google that, B2B Never Sleeps, you're going to find out my blog is number one, right? It's number one in the organic content. So flip the switch. So if you expect to be found in this data mess, I mean, unbelievable, right? You need a plan. You have to have a plan. And that plan, ladies and gentlemen, has to be written down. It has to be written down. And you need some different tactics. If you're using the same old, you're getting the same old. Do you know how many emails you get in the morning when you fire up your computer? Right? Right? Am I wrong? Of course you do. And how many do you just hit the delete button? How many do you select and then say, block this? I don't want to hear from this person ever again. And yet they keep on coming. You know, I grew up as a direct mail guy. And somebody once asked me, I get so much junk mail. Now we're beyond junk mail now, but now it's junk email, right? Am I right? And junk phone calls and AI generated phone calls, junk, right? And someone asked me early in my career when I was doing print direct mail, right? They asked me, why do I get so much junk mail? And the answer I told them, I don't know if they believe me, is that because it works. What do you mean it works? I never read that crap, right? Of course, but somebody does. Somebody does. I assure you, coming from business and being in business over 30 years, if something isn't working, eventually that person will stop using it. And the reason you keep getting email all the time is that it's working for these people in some cases. Not every case. You know, the more sophisticated you get. That's why you have to differentiate your tactics from all the other BS that's out there, which requires time, which, as I told you earlier, you only have a limited amount. And you need some experience. You can't just sit down unless you're Mozart and start writing compelling email, right? Although AI can help you. But how many emails have you gotten recently that have the word, I'm thrilled, THRILAD? Anytime you get an email with that word in it, you can bet and win the bet that it's been generated by an AI, by artificial intelligence. Why? How do I know? How do you know that, Jim? Just practice and do the experience. Besides, when's the last time you used the word thrilled? I'm thrilled to meet you. I'm thrilled. Who's thrilled? Nobody talks like that. So you have to understand AI is a great helper, but it's not the answer. You are the answer. So go ahead and flip that switch. The real objective yesterday, today, and tomorrow is to build relationships to answer these questions. Ladies and gentlemen, Do you have any long-lasting relationships? What's the longest relationship you ever had with a client? Well, Jim, I've had a relationship for 30 years with a client. Good for you. Congratulations. Study the relationship and then use what you do to maintain that relationship. But they don't last that long. The longest relationship I ever had with a client was 20 years. Took 10 years to build it, 10 years to lose it. Right? Why? Because things change. Things change. Relationships change. You change. They change. We're going to talk about that. But you still need relationships if you're going to do business. And that's what finding and targeting the right customers is all about. Building relationships with clients. One phone call, one email is not going to do it. You need knowledge. We used to go to market looking for unduplicated knowledge, but now AI is here. So how do we compete with AI, which really has all the knowledge on the internet it needs to produce a result, right? Well, guess what? AI is now sourcing our information as answers to their questions when you put in a question. Certain things we've produced over the years, AI has found out and now uses as a sort when they answer certain questions. They're going to do the same thing to you. You go ahead and you ask AI a question about what you do. Guaranteed you, sometimes if you've got a lot of content on your website, like we do, it's going to use your content to answer your own questions. So in effect, you are competing with yourself. There's a great movie called The Magnificent Seven, the original, where Yul Brynner comes back and the Mexicans who wanted to hire him to protect them from the bandits in their village, Yul Brynner says, I found the best with a knife and a gun. And one of the Mexicans says, I don't understand. If he's the best with a knife and a gun, with whom does he compete? And Yul Brynner looks at him with disdain and says, with himself, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been competing with yourself all along and you didn't know it. So AI brought this to your attention. You're competing with yourself. You need a strategy if you're going to do this successfully. To compete with yourself, you have to continually be learning knowledge. You have to gain knowledge every day. Learn, learn, learn. Lifelong learners, right? And you need a strategy. Anticipate, react, adapt is the most effective strategy that I know from Alexander the Great. Anticipate, react, adapt. We're going to talk about that today. And business, you need business. You can be, business. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to start a business. Great. Good luck. You need customers, right? And don't say you're going to write an app. Please, we got enough apps. But it all begins with a plan. So planning. What kind of stuff are you selling? Well, Jim, I'm an interior designer. I sell compelling, amazing designs. So does everybody else that's in that business. There's like, 78,000 interior designers in the country, maybe in the world. If you look at the ASID membership rosters, right, and IDCEC. If you look at IIDA, rather, pardon me. If you look at the members, you're all competing against yourselves, even though you share. Designers, Jim, we love to share things. Of course you do. But when you share too much, how do you differentiate? I'm just asking. Houses, it's probably one of the great picture databases out there about things, that are designed, residential design. So we've got the greatest photo array, right? But they don't hire you. They hire consumers go on Houzz, they find out what they want, and then they hire a contractor. So the minute you post something, if they like it, you don't even know that people take your stuff, do you? So what are you really selling, right? We're going to talk about that. You're selling your experience. It boils down to your experience versus your competitor's experience. I talked to an architect just recently, and he says, Jim, I don't know what you're going to tell me. We're architects. We all do the same thing. Well, if that were true, what kind of world is this if you can go to any architect and get the same thing? Within 15 minutes, I had convinced them that he knew more about educational facilities than his competitors because that was his specialty. You have to look at what you're selling. Where do your customers shop? Guaranteed they're on the digital highway, right? They're shopping online. They're using social media channels. The most important marketing tactic you have is your website, because your website is your website. It's not LinkedIn's website. It's not Instagram's website. Is a channel. And guess what? So's your website. So your consumers, your prospects, your customers, your future customers are online digitally shopping. So what kind of services or materials will you need to attract these people? And what will they do with the stuff once they buy it from you? You know, I used to tell people, designers, I still tell them, you are the most, I don't know, lucky people in the world. What do you mean, Jim? Why am I lucky? Well, because when you design a kitchen, a bathroom, a building, when anybody experiences what your design is, they think of you every day. Every time, like the kitchen we had just recently designed, every morning I get up to make my espresso coffee. I go into our newly designed kitchen, and the designer's name appears suddenly in my head. And I see the good points and the bad points about the design, because there's always good and bad points, right? And if there's more good points than bad points, that's a good design. If there's bad points, that person will never, ever, ever forget you. You see what I'm saying? So you have to write out your plan, your narrative. What are you doing? What are you selling? Tactics, your website. I told you, your website is the most important. You need databases to market to people. Where do you get your prospects? How do you find your prospects? Do you have a form on your website that collects names that you could talk to? Well, how do you do these things? How do you do these things? Because you need databases. Do you just buy a list from some character that emails you and say, I've got the best list of people that you need to reach, which is mostly BS. And the internet, do you go on the internet? Do you spend some time on the internet to look at what your competitors are doing? Do you use social media effectively? Well, Jim, I don't have time. Well, you got to make some time. Are your customers or your prospects on one channel and not two channels, or are they on all channels? Are they firing on all channels? Do you have to be on all channels? Well, depends on your target. You're targeting big companies, small companies, medium. See, there's a lot of factors you have to think about. And networking. Do you go to network events? Do you go to a webinar, a seminar? Do you go to anything that you should be marketing all the time to people and listening? You got to listen, right? Time. You have to set, I'm not being facetious, 24 hours a day for this activity. What do you mean, Jim? When do you sleep? You can't. You cannot sleep. I'm kidding. Of course, you have to sleep, but you should keep a timesheet. Do you keep a timesheet? I'm agency trained, so I keep a timesheet. I'm going to write down 1 hour for this webinar. That's an hour I'll never get back. But I'm so glad I'm investing it with you. I want to show you the 30 plus years of experience that we've gained in understanding how information flows. You understand that? Good. Any questions? So I see some questions coming in, and I'm going to hold off on answering them. I'm going to hold off a little bit, because one of the questions already that came in is, with so much noise online, Jane asked, how can we make sure our content stands out? I'm glad you asked that question, Jane. I'm going to answer that question. But basically, one of the answers is the content, SEO. We'll talk about that. You need experience. Every rejection, you come closer to one step towards acceptance. Have you heard that telemarketers actually have a win-loss ratio? You understand that? I mean, real, not AI telemarketing, but real telemarketers. So do you. If you're calling up people to get business, if you're sending emails to get business, your emails, your phone calls, whatever you're doing has a win-loss ratio. What the hell does that mean, Joe? Well, it means a win-loss ratio is you're going to have a certain amount of losses before you get a win. Every telemarketer I've ever met in my life, the good ones, they know their win-loss ratio. What does that mean? It means that I have to make 29 phone calls before I get one win. That means I'm rejected 29 times before I win one. There are no positive win-loss. You lose more than you make. You will lose more. So enjoy the rejection. We were rejected on a bid I was telling you earlier about on a research project. The bid was $30,000 for a research project, right? And we got informed via email that we didn't get it. So I don't just let that ride. I call them up. You got to call them up and say, well, okay, I got rejected. So I called them up. I said, I really appreciate the opportunity to have, bid for this research project because we do a lot of research. I said, but I was just wondering if you can tell me a little bit more about why we weren't selected. I said, was it the price? And she goes, no, no. You were very competitive. So I checked off a box. Well, that's good. So I wasn't rejected on my price. $30,000 was right in line with what they wanted for the scope of the project. Okay. So I said, was it the proposal? Because we do very extensive proposal. Oh, no. She said, you were the most comprehensive proposal. Huh. So I checked that box. So no price is competitive, proposal was the best, but I was still rejected. So I said, I have to ask you then, if that was true, why were we rejected? And she said, we wanted something more superficial. This is an honest answer she gave me. And I said, thank you very much. Keep us in mind for the future, and hung up. And I did a dance in my office. I just said, yes. Why? Because I don't do superficial. We don't do superficial. We've never been superficial. You want superficial, you go to the next agency. So knowing why you're rejected is very important. Now, if you're dialing for dollars, you don't get that opportunity, right? But you do if you engage. If you're talking to somebody, you can always ask them where it is. So you got to find scripts that work, and you learn from these things, and you try new things. But most of all, the plan should target the kind of customers you want. That's really what you have to do. You can't please everybody. There's a media strategy called spray and pray. It's based on basically artillery in the services, where you have artillery where they spray and pray that they hit something, and then they adjust. Napoleon was a big sprayer and prayer, and he was very accurate. So we don't subscribe to that. There's a time to spray and pray, but when we're talking about targeting people, what we want to do is have a plan that targets the right kind of customers you want. So we're going to do some examples. And by the way, if you're interested, 7 things to ask when you lose a pitch, one of them are our most successful blogs. It's read a lot. So the first question I asked you was the customer I lost that I would like to get back, right? How do you lose this customer, right? If you got that customer in mind, how did you lose that customer? Was it sudden? Was it a sudden breakup? Did you see it coming? Were there clues that they weren't satisfied with your service? Was it a change at the customer when someone left the company and you got the Mack truck effect, where that new person brought in their own person? In the breaking of the relationship, who was at fault? Was it you? Did you do something wrong? Or was it just chance? There's no such thing as a coincidence, right? So there's always a reason why you lose customers. How serious was this breakup? We had a customer that I resigned many years, several years ago. I said I couldn't take it. They were costing me more money to retain them than to serve them. So when that happens, you make a decision and you break up. 2 years later, they came back and they wanted to rehire us. And I said, why do you want to do that? And she said, well, we grew out of puberty. We're no longer in puberty. And I still have that client today, and it's a great relationship. It's a great relationship. So how serious was your breakup? Mine was serious, but they came back, right? Did you lose to a competitor? Do you know this? Or did the customer just pull the work in-house that you decided not to do the project? What's the story? You got to find these things out. That's why you should read that blog. Did you survey the customer when you lost them? Did you go back, read that blog, right? 7 things to ask if you lose a pitch, 7 things to ask when you lose a pitch. You can Google that, we'll be there. Did you ask them what happened? And who does the customer interact with now? Who's the new agency? Even with our current clients, they have agencies because we're special projects in many cases. You can't be afraid to ask, who's your agency? And then you find out the agency and you learn from their choice of agencies and you learn from their choice of customers. So if you're an architect and you lost the project to another architect, find out who the architect is and figure out why they won that piece of business and not you. And do you really want them back? I've talked to several remodelers over the course of the years, and I had one remodeler that comes to mind when I was at the KBIS show. He was saying, I really wanted this customer. And when I got him, it was the worst decision that I ever made because they called me at 3 a.m. So be careful what you wish for. Here's an example. Caledonian Furniture was in Illinois on the lake, and he wanted to get all his customers back. For some reason, business sucked. And so we assessed the situation. I'm not going to read all this. But the one thing I want to call your attention to is RFM analysis. What's that? Well, that's recency, frequency, monetary value. All right, you do research on your data set. We can have a whole course on that. But you look at your customers and you ask yourself, who's the most recent of my customers? Who's the most frequent of my customers? Well, Jim, I only do kitchens, and once they do a kitchen, they don't come back. Well, that's true unless they move. So how many of those have you had? Not only that, when you do a kitchen and you're successful, how many do they recommend to you? How many referrals have you got? Ladies and gentlemen, most of your business is, let's face it, referral. It doesn't matter what you do. It's referral, word of mouth, WOM, right? And that helps, but you got to understand how to start the WOM. How do you start the conversation? That's what we're talking about today. Cold calling is really WOM. You start the conversation, right? That's what this is. So anyway, we looked at his database and we hatched a strategy. And we said, when's the last time you talked to your customers? And Caledonian said, well, it's been a long time. I said, well, you need a newsletter. So we produced a newsletter. Here's the newsletter, right? And we sent it out to his current customers, and we put in a return reply card. This was a beautiful piece, a letter with a brochure and a reply card. He says, well, I don't want the reply card. And we said, Barry, why not? He said, well, it makes me look like a telemarketer. There's Barry and his sons. It makes me look like a telemarketer. I said, no, it doesn't. It's a way to get feedback from your customers. Well, I don't know. I said, I'll tell you what, Barry, we'll collect these cards. So we had the address coming back to our offices. And I said, we'll collect the cards and then we'll fax them over to you. In those days, it was faxes mainly. So we did that. And once we dropped the mail, it started coming and they started coming in. I think we got 50 back the first week we dropped, right? Here's the inside. Isn't that beautiful? He sold English antique furniture. That was his gig. His average sales price for one of these pieces, right? For probably this little table here. That's not a little table. This table here, $7,500. And when we first met him, I said, Barry, business is bad. Oh, it's horrible. I said, well, he says, that's why we're thinking of advertising on Comcast with commercials. I said, let me ask you a question. Do you think people watching, cable television have $7,500 worth of discretionary income to buy this little table? He says, you don't understand, Jim, we're desperate. So lesson number 1, don't do business when you're desperate. Stop. You can never be desperate. Even if you're desperate, don't be desperate. It's not that bad. You got to think things through. This mailing started producing leads. And after the first week of 50 leads, I called him up. He said, how's business? He says, it's still bad. I said, so what are you doing with those cards that we sent you, that we faxed over to you? He says, what do you mean? I said, what are you doing? Those are leads. He says, I'm not doing anything with them. I said, can we call them? He says, what do you mean? Can we call them? What are you going to tell them, Jim? I said, well, I'm not going to tell them anything. I'm going to sell them something. He never did it. See this picture here? There's no caption. This is just a nice, pretty picture, right? $5,500 sold off of this cover of this newsletter. Some woman, saw that, called Barry, and bought it. $5,500 right off of the cover. He hadn't talked to his customers. If you don't talk to your customers, right, you're missing opportunities because your business is about to change. When? Tomorrow. It's going to change the next day. So flip the switch, would you please? Do some direct mail, do some email, but make the offer different. Remember what I told you. Your list is the most important thing. His customers are fearful, so bring the furniture to them. That's what the purpose of the news. They didn't want to travel to a showroom, perhaps, right? It was far. I don't want to go. Okay, so bring the furniture to them. They won't come to you, you go to them. Private showings online. Take a group of consumers, do a panel discussion, and then show people what your designs are like, or what your work is like, or what your service is like. Make it easy for customers. You have to be multi-channel today. People don't have time to waste. And I tell that to everybody. You think people are just sitting, waiting for you to come to them and say, oh, look at what I've got. No. They're coming, they have needs now. And if they can't find you when they have that need, you're out of luck. Because nothing changes. People need things, you supply things, right? So you need email marketing. You need to be there. You need to be there on your website with good SEO. Flip that switch. Next question. The market I would most like to penetrate. Great. You're in residential, commercial, industrial, whatever. Well, how big is that market? What is that market like now that you want to penetrate? If you're going to residential, that's huge. If you're going to commercial, that's big, but it's not as big as residential. So how big is the market that you're after? Is it a luxury market? Do you want people with income over $1 because you design kitchens? I don't know. How big is the market? You need to know these things. Not exactly, but you have to have an idea. Pardon me. How much of the market do you want to eventually have? I've worked for companies that had 90% of a market, right? Now, today, that market is 45%. They have 45% because it's a competitive situation. They dropped the ball. So some people are increasing and some people increase their market share because they're the only ones in the market. And then suddenly you have competitors, right? A type of design, a new thing that you're adding to it, whatever. You start doing it, other people copy it, and the next thing, that market changes, right? So how are you going to segment your market? How much time will you allocate to penetrate the market? If you're going to penetrate a new market, that means you're going to have to invest time. Remember, you'll never get back the time you're investing. So you better spend it wisely. What will be your approach? Is there one tactic that seems better in this case, or do you need an integrated approach? My bet is integration. Multi-channel is the most important. Are there other opportunities you might use to flank the market? Let me give you an example. I asked Google, do real estate agents hire or recommend interior designers? I picked interior designers, but you could do this with anything. Look at any other market. In this case, I made up a thing. Well, I wondered if real estate agents hire or recommend interior designers, because real estate agents selling houses really, right? You got to prepare the house for showing, right? So that, to me, who better to do that, to prepare a home to show, than an interior designer? So start with Google, no matter what you're doing. So in this case, 70% of people start with Google, so I did too, and then you read the articles. Why would an estate agency hire an interior designer? How to hire an interior designer for less? Team up with real estate agents. See this one right here? Right? That's an old article. Well, Jim, that's old. That's out of date. No, that's called great SEO. Why? Because Google reads everything. It reads everything. This is a search that came up before AI, right? I'm going to show you one in a minute with AI, but Google reads everything. What does that mean? Well, that means for you, the more blogs, the more content you have on your website, the more Google is going to index you, the more likely you are to have better SEO. Do you understand do you understand this? Okay. So with AI, here's AI. Google has AI now. Let's hear it for Google, right? Of course, they didn't waste any time. Yes, real estate agents can recommend interior designers and may often offer consultation services themselves. Boom. If you're an interior designer and you want to penetrate the real estate market, boom, there it is. Here's your blueprint. Here's your blueprint. Well, how do I know AI is true, Jim? Well, you don't until you start doing some research, right? So, with all of this here, now they answered this, right? And they give you other things that you could do. Why interiors design, right? 2021, 2022, 2023, all the recent things that they've source coded here. This is all source coded. You see, and look at Laura U Design is an interior designer. Decor Matters, interior designer. April interior design. Google is sourcing their answers to consumers who ask this question, to anybody who asks this question, from interior designers. Do you understand? Do you get it? And who's to say you can't do a deal with a real estate agent? Ladies and gentlemen, flip that switch. Would you flip that switch? So that's if your goal is if this is your goal, nothing's changed except your tactics. Website, we're going to talk about that. Think virtually, right? It works with any profession, not just interior designers. So how are real estate agents or your targets operating today? Whatever your targets are, what are they doing today? How do you meet them? Overcome your fear, get on the phone, talk to them. We had a client ask us, if only I could find who's specifying my product. I just don't know yet. I just don't know yet. I said, we can help you, right? In a matter of like 5 minutes, I found out the title, probably. And then I told him, I said, by the next time we talk, which will be next week, I'm going to know the answer to your question. Not only am I going to know the answer to his question, I'm going to have it outlined on how to reach that target. Why? Because I'm going to call him up. I'm going to call him up. I'm going to call up people like him and ask him if he specifies this product and how he specifies this product and when he specifies this product. I'm going to do my homework. You have to do your homework, right? So don't stop. He who hesitates is lost. You can't stop. Absolute rest is death. All right, this is a nice blog. Are you using a laser or a flashlight to solve your problem? You see, it's the same elephant, but if you use a laser, you see this. If you use a flashlight, you see this. They're both, you need both. You need lasers and flashlights. Another, the customer I would most like to get that I don't have now. Oh, there's a tough one. What are the characteristics of that customer? Where do they hang out? What does that mean? Well, what social media do they use? Do they post things? You know, have they blogged on their website? If that's a customer and it's a developer, what are they saying about themselves on their website? How do they get their information? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And how do you know about their company? How does their company go to market? What are they doing to market themselves? You understand? This is research. This is common sense research that you have to do. If not you, somebody that works for you. If not somebody that works for you, somebody you farm out to. And you have to really look at their website. But no matter who it is, no matter who you want to get that you don't have now, okay, that's the question. The customer I would most like to get, oh, Jim, if I could only get this person, this customer. All right, start with Google and LinkedIn. Google with their AI opens up, right? Wondering information, wonderful information. LinkedIn, including Sales Navigator, gives you access. Dialing, not for dollars, but phone calls, your target marketing. It's all the prep work you get before you launch your campaign to get that customer. For example, this is a random topic. Google, can you tell me commercial building managers in New Jersey? I want to work for some commercial building managers, the people who hire me. I'm a designer, architect, whatever. And I only picked this because most of you in the audience are interior designers, architects, kitchen bath designers. But there are some other companies in here that are not related to that, but they do supplies, like people who make signage. There's some people who make signage in the audience. All right. It's the same thing. If you need to sell your signage to people in the commercial, it's the same thing. Who buys? You can ask Google anything you want. So Google gives you these results in New Jersey, right? Top three. And so I looked at the top three. I hit the first three. Coldwell Banker. Oh, Jim, that's too big. That's a big company. I only have 5 people working for me. I can't do that. So go to the bottom of the list and you get Oxford Realty Group and Nexus Properties. So I picked Nexus Properties and I hop on LinkedIn. And there's LinkedIn, Nexus Properties, 319 followers. 319 followers? Really? That's all? I mean, LinkedIn is vast. There's millions of people on LinkedIn, and they only have 319. That's more like it. That sounds reasonable. They've got 51 to 200 employees. They actually, if you use LinkedIn, you can find the people working there. They give you a little background of this group, of the Oxford group. So you find, target, you explore them in LinkedIn. You use Google to find out more information. You can ask Google about Nexus Properties. What properties are Nexus Properties developing now, today, right? And it'll tell you that. Then use your phone, email, and marketing to attack and get an appointment. The tactics are the same. Only the content of the tactics is different. So for example, if you use LinkedIn, here are they. Here's Chief Operating Officer, Property Manager, Marketing Property Manager. And if you use Sales Navigator, which is very powerful but very expensive, you can get them down here and you can start saving them, connecting with them by email and so on. So ladies and gentlemen, flip the switch. Please flip it. Because the commercial market's in turmoil. Gensler publishes newsletters every week. Do you get the Gensler newsletter called Dialogue? You should. They fill it with beautiful information that you can utilize in your own pitches. Because turmoil means it's this. You hear that? We have a saying at Interline, when we hear the knocking on the door, opportunities knocking, we don't say who's there. We open the door and say, come on in, come on in. Because the tactics are the same. People are people. They're looking for solutions. Strategy is everything. We talked about strategy. Decide on your tactics. Do you need a microsite? Should you do more social media? Should you we're going to talk about this. What about the analytics? You need some ROI. And don't forget traditional post office. Well, Jim, the post office, well, they still deliver mail. They don't deliver as much mail, but they still deliver mail, right? On Mondays, the mailbox is full, and by Friday, it's less full, unless there's a political campaign going. Then it's full every day of the week, right? Think about it. A thank you note personally mailed to your customer, or a little note that includes an article mailed, not emailed. Email you can still use. But you should really think about these other ideas, right? Be a provider of reliable information. Don't lie. Be truthful. It's not about you. It's about them. So when you send something out, we are the best company in the world. It's not that'll go down into the toilet, right? You don't talk about yourself. You leave that for the end of your message. Talk about them and what they need or what you think they need based on your research. That's the way to do this. As an example, this guy's the head of Condé Nast. Big public. They publish Vogue and all that stuff, right? He was doing Wolfgang Blau. Now, I never met this guy, right? But he had a podcast, which I listened to. And I Twittered him. At that time, it was Twitter. Now it's X. I said, we should all listen to this podcast. to learn what not only he's doing, but what we should be thinking about doing. Within seconds, right? Or I should say minutes. Well, thank you, Jim. Ladies and gentlemen, this didn't bring me one dime of revenue, but it proved to me that you can connect with anybody via social media, including your prospects. I didn't want this guy as a customer, but he had such a profound podcast on what was going on in publishing today that I just had to thank him. And without social media, how do you do that? You'd have to write a letter and hope it gets through. I write letters and they almost always get through. Well, Jim, how can you say that? Because I FedEx them. If I am interested in a prospect and I want to do business with that prospect in the future, I'm going to FedEx it or UPS it. I'm not going to mail it. I'm going to spend the extra bucks and make sure he gets it. And in fact, at least more than one time when I called to do the follow. In fact, one time I got the call and I didn't know, I forgot I had sent him this letter, and it was him. I got your letter on my desk and I'm thinking, who is this guy? And it was the president of a major company. So you got to keep track of what you do, right? Not only that, I Googled later on and he said, thanks for the retweet. It's all true. See, you engage in conversation. So if business teaches us anything, it teaches us we can communicate with anyone. And if that's true, and it is true, what you have to decide, ladies and gentlemen, is who you're going to target. Who you're going to target. Because if you do what I'm telling you to do, you're going to hit them. You're going to hit them and engage them. It may not lead anywhere, but you will be able to hit them. So this is some of the things we've done that you might do. You can run a native ad campaign. You can do direct mail, email, webinars. We do webinars all the time. This is a webinar that's going to be recorded and put on our website, right? Podcasts, programs, interviews, LinkedIn, post, blog. Jim, we had a session the other day and said, how often should I post? We had a social media webinar, making sense of it, which is tough to do. How often should you post? What do you think? What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? Well, my feeling is you post as often as you can, but I have a client who only wants to post once a week. You post whatever your decision is, follow it. But just remember, if you're not there and they're looking for something, you don't get seen. You just don't get seen. And remember this, on your website, when you post stuff, Google indexes and Google reads everything. They don't read pictures, but they read everything. Become the news cycle in our little world, right? Send news out. People are always, they miss it. Jim, I didn't miss this. Thanks for sending me that article. Seriously, that's what happens. You don't know. You think everybody sees what you see. They don't. They don't have the time. So you have to keep reminding them. In the old direct mail days, you hit them over the head. You hit them over the head again and again and again. Because it doesn't work. It doesn't work if you mail one. Well, everybody heard I can't tell you how often companies have told, well, everybody knows who we are. And we did research last year for a major association, and they said, why, are you sure? Yeah, okay, let's test it. Nobody knew them. 2 out of 10 designers knew who this association was, and it should be 10 out of 10. Why? Because they're one of the major associations in that field. But only 2 out of 10. Why? Well, Jim, we're doing a crap job of marketing. No, you're not. You're just not exposing yourself enough, right? These people are busy. People are busy. Come on. Phone, internet, media. I've got webinars on most of these activities, so please come back, right? Do you have questions? I think we got a little time for questions. Let's see. Yeah, we do. I think about 5 minutes. Jane, we'll start with yours. Jane wrote, with so much noise, how do your content stand out? Well, the key of standing out is to be relevant, right? You want to be relevant. Now, what's relevant? I'm going to tell you what relevant is. It's timeless information. It's information that even though it's 5 years old, is still relevant. What can you say is relevant? Well, One of the most relevant things I know is if you lose something, what should you ask when you lose that account? When you lose the pitch, when you lose. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to be in my business, I have to stand out against huge companies. And not only that, now with internal staffs, right? So you have to become what they call, no offense, thought leaders. What's a thought leader? It's somebody who has a thought leader. I hate these words. I'm an English major, thought leader. That means a leader who has thoughts. I'm sorry. No, a thought leader is somebody who really hits it, right? That tells you stuff you don't know, right? So if you Google, should I sell to a group or an individual? That's a common question that I get all the time, and I turned it into a blog several years ago. And if you Google, should I pitch to a group or an individual? I'm going to be on that page one after AI answers that question. I've had it where sometimes AI will source my blog. So if whatever your objective, I want to be the best architect in the world known for education. Well, start posting about that. Start posting about your projects, what you do differently, right? SEO is the key, search engine optimization. Your insights are your insights. You penetrate the noise by giving people something they don't get anywhere else. You don't make money on stuff everybody knows. You make money on stuff no one knows. Well, Jim, the minute I put it online, everybody knows it. Well, that's the risk. But the good news is people are so busy, not everyone will know it. We've been in this business over 30 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we've seen everything, and we've failed many times, and we've succeeded many times. But from every encounter, we gain something and we lose something. Like in chess, when you move a piece in chess, you gain something and you lose something, right? So the object of the game is to checkmate the king, to make more gains than losses every time you move a piece, right? True? Of course it's true. That's the same thing in business. You want to make moves that gain you something so that when you want to land that account, checkmate the king, you've made more things that you win than you lose. And you do that by putting on your website every piece of unique content that you do. Every piece. Don't hide anything. Well, hide certain things. You don't want to give away the store, right? But at the same time, sure you do, because even if you gave away the store, they don't have the resources in many cases to do what you do. If they did, do you not think they would do that? If they did? Here's another question from Tony. What are the most effective digital channels for finding high-value prospects today, and how do you determine which ones to focus on? That's a tough question to generalize and answer. Why? Well, because the digital channel of digital channels is the internet. And you have to that's why I recommended going to Google and LinkedIn. Start with Google and just ask your question, right? Right? Or go to AI, find out an AI tool you're using, ChatGPT, and ask the chat, how do I find blah, 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 blah. LinkedIn is a good one, right? That's a good one. Associations are a good one. For example, if you join an association, let's say you make I don't know, a type of technology that's used by fire protection. Just say that. Well, fire protection in itself, right, is a specialty. It's a subcontract, right? The architect subcontracts that to specialists who write those types of specifications. But everybody needs fire protection. Everybody, right? Look what the hell's happening in California. I mean, everybody has to understand fire protection. And if you're a manufacturing plant or you're a commercial building, you yourself need to understand fire protection. So as a designer or an architect, even though you subcontract that to a specialty, learn about that. Learn how it influences the decision of the specification. And you can do that by just listening online. So I tell people in social media, it's not about posting all the time. Yeah, you can post. It's about listening. You have to listen. There are forums going on right now on LinkedIn about that topic. I guarantee you that. I haven't Googled it, and I haven't certain gone on LinkedIn and asked about that. But if you go on LinkedIn and you ask your questions, LinkedIn is going to tell you what's going on with those questions, which are all relevant, right? E-commerce. We had a client once that wanted to know about sales spiking for a bidet seat, right? Bidet, they made bidet seats, the biggest company in the world. They made bidet seats, and during COVID, spiking, right? Sales of bidet seats were spiking. We want to know that. Can you do research based on our Amazon results? Because they were selling it on Amazon and the big retailers, which were still open during COVID. I said, I can save you a lot of money, and I can tell you that the answer is hygiene. There's no toilet paper. You remember? You remember there was no toilet paper, right? If people were running out of toilet paper, they need something. So they were buying bidet seats. And the client said, that's really, but we really need to quantify that. So we did the research and we found out it's hygiene. They wanted hygiene, not just because there was no toilet paper, but because there was a virus going on, right? We all know about that. Well, guess what? In the research, we found a Kansas City contractor who, when this was going on, went to his local distributor, bought all the bidet seats he could, and sold them at a high profit because he figured it out. That's what your job is. I think I got time for one more question. This is from Ben. Ben, thank you. What are the most common mistakes businesses make when creating a customer acquisition strategy, and how do you avoid them? Why, Ben? I want to thank you for putting me on the spot. Holy mackerel. Let me repeat this. What are the most common mistakes businesses make when you create an acquisition strategy? Well, all right. The good news is it's the title of this course, right? What's the title of this course? How to find and target the right customers. They don't define the target. They say, well, we need some new business. Start sending out emails. That's the wrong thing to do, right? And not only that, when you do that, you send the same message to everybody. But guess what? Not everybody is the same. An owner of a warehouse is not the same as an owner of affordable housing. They're both owners, but they have different property types. And if you send the same message about what you do to both of them, one of them is going to fall flat. You have to niche. You have to niche your message, niche it to the audience. And finally, you do ROI. I've got more. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put a blog out and I'll let all the attendees know when I do that. I'll send you all an email for registering or taking this course, because this course will be offered online on our website. Thank you. On behalf of Interline Creative Group, and we've been doing these now for a long time, since the crash of '09, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. Remember when the market crashed in '09? The phone stops ringing. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Well, we're still here. This has been approved by AIA, IDCEC, and NKBA. It's on our website if you go to events and CEUs on Interline. Thank you so much. My name is Jim Nowakowski on behalf of Interline Creative Group. Jim@interlinegroup.com, or you can call me at 847-358-4848 if you have questions. I'll put together, again, a blog about the answers to some of your questions that I, again, didn't get to. And at Interline Gym, if you Google at Interline Gym, you'll find all of my accounts. I'm a great X guy. I love X. I started with X, but I also do LinkedIn. Thank you so much. Hope you got something out of it and you spent your time wisely, because I certainly did mine. I enjoy this very much. Thanks again. Take it easy, everybody, and good luck with business.